You need a big piece of plate. You need your Cretacolor pencils, right? Okay. You're also going to need your big chunk of charcoal. One of these sticks, which I'm going to have a bunch of, so you guys can just take one of mine. Elaine, just answer a question. Newsprint pads. Anyone who didn't get one, you can grab one on your way out. Okay. So make sure that you have this charcoal. Specifically, I'm going to give you guys the Blick brand. It tends to work a little bit better than the other types. You want erasers. I'm going to have my handy dandy kneaded eraser. Make sure it's pretty clean. I have an electric eraser. You don't have to have them. If you do, that's great. And then a white eraser of some sort. Okay, we use white because it doesn't leave pigment on the paper. And then I like to have my HB charcoal and like a B charcoal pencil. That's really like all I need. Okay, just these two, but I have a bunch of. Yeah, we'll talk about them kind of when we go through. I will pass this around. This is the demo I did. I was not home. Maybe I'm still on the top of it. This is kind of what we're expecting from you guys. I only did the skull, and we'll talk about the rest, but it's going to be like a full Ecorche. You guys are getting this paper from me, and you're getting this paper from me. It's just not painted on, right? This is a demo for the class. The Duralar is going to be the exact same size, or pretty close to the same size as the paper that you get, which is 40 by 25. And you're going to do everything that we do today. You're going to basically take that Duralar and you're going to put it right on top. You're going to match your skull, bless you, to your model skull, and then start drawing the anatomy for the model that sits right underneath. Right, so you're doing two drawings for your model. Okay, you see that? You guys have 2 Mondays to work on this in class. You guys are the hybrid class, so unfortunately you don't have the 4 days that the class does. So you signed up for this class. Just kidding. I love you guys. We're gonna go over it. It's on your assignment sheet. Color pencil. Which color pencil you talking about? The Cretacolor. It's on this. Whatever word. So I did my study over an ink drawing that was a demo for another class. This is not like actually correct because your drawing is not going to have like ink in it by any means. It's just going to be charcoal like the ones back there. But it's the same concept more or less. Okay. The thing that I always talk about with my students is like the photo reference. Why is the photo reference important? Thank you, Casey. That's a beautiful statement. One taken right from my mouth. I appreciate your repeating it. That means you're actually listening to me, and I love it. The photo reference is only as good as, I mean, drawing only as good as a photo reference, right? And the reason I printed it on crappy regular paper is to show you that it doesn't matter if it's on glossy paper, if it's still a crappy photo, it's still a crappy photo, all right? So make sure that you have just a clear image. That's all I'm looking for. I like high contrasting images. You can see just a different variety of them, you know, and I threw out some of the references for the other drawings too, but the shadows help me kind of break apart the patterns and see the values a lot better. I think it's so important because that's how I'm gonna like make the decisions that I make to like show value relationship in my drawing. Okay, so I'm gonna pass this around so you guys can see this. When you hold it, just make sure you hold it from the edge of the paper. You can flip the Duralar over. Yes.
Ours is gonna be full body though.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if I did a full body demo, it would take about 10 hours. You guys would be here for a while.
You planning the materials for full body?
You guys have big sheets of paper sitting right there and a big piece of Duralar that's coming out. If I gave you the paper right now, everyone's going to roll it, and guess what's going to happen to the paper? I'll get destroyed. Okay. So starting next Monday, okay, just in case I forget to say this, everyone can start transferring their page. Okay. So for this demo, I'm going to be focusing a lot on that. We're going to be also talking about the difference between drawing and rendering and how I like shift between those mindsets when I'm actually doing a drawing like this, right? Even though we're focusing on value relationships, it's all based on the types of materials that we're using and how those materials actually create different values, right? Charcoal is not the same value as a Cretacolor pencil. And I'm going to show you a cheat sheet for the graphite pencil, which is a 2H pencil, and I'll also show you how to use the regular charcoal pencils, the 8 pencils. Okay, That's kind of the goal for today. The other thing that I learned about using the Duralar is what I wanted to do myself. Is the Duralar kind of is like a medium gray value, right? It doesn't really get white like the paper. So
What medium will we be using?
I'm gonna go over that. Okay. So the one thing that I was gonna say about the Duralar is if you want to, which I will demo, I'm gonna show you guys how to use ink on the Duralar so you can poke out your whites a little bit. Okay, so you'll see the demo that I did earlier today. It's sitting over there on the hot plate. It's not really done. It's like 50% of the way there. You can quickly see how we laid in all the structure of the skull. Okay. The skull. You want to use an actual skull. So we have two skulls here. I'm going to talk about how to like take the picture before you go home. Not today necessarily, but when you're working on your drawing. And I actually have the light out already, and you actually want to light your skull to match your what? Picture, right? Because who are you drawing? You're drawing your drawing. So you're gonna see like this isn't some like random skull I drew, right? Actually change the orbit of her eyes, change the nasal bone. I understand that I'm a little bit more older than you guys, and I can do stuff a little bit more easily, but it's her face on her face, right? So you're not just drawing some random skull on a drawing. Let me just clarify. You are doing it like you're doing it at crochet. You are actually adjusting. Let me put it right here. You are adjusting the relationships of your anatomical shapes, right, to the drawing that you are actually doing. That's kind of the goal. Okay, does that make sense? What's the other thing that I'm paying attention to? Angle is obvious. It's the other thing. Lighting, right? You're gonna notice that if I switch values, if I switch the pages, they're gonna have the exact same light source. Okay, so we're gonna talk about that and how to like focus on those shapes and then focus on those relationships. And you can't, it's much harder to do this out of your head. So if you have reference for it, which we do, use it. Okay. I want you guys to use the skulls and practice from those shapes. The skull is the only skeletal thing that you were drawing. You look at the rest of my drawing, you're gonna see that I'm connecting muscles to that bone. And everything else down here is going to be like a bone. It's going to be a muscular landmark. So we are drawing Ecorche drawing. So it's going to look like that dude right there. Okay. And I will have like 6 or 7 of these models out for you guys to like work from and use. But I do not put them out while we are learning the anatomy. It's kind of like a cheat sheet, makes it a little too easy. Okay. All right. I know you're all like, you torture us. Yes, I torture you. All right. Does anybody have any questions about the expectations? How many drawings are you doing? 2. Okay, great. What is skeletal in that final drawing? Just the skull. How are you going to draw the hands and the feet? You're going to remember planometric. Good job, sir. And you will see that there's a little demo in the corner over there of like a planometric hand that we're going to talk about. So I'll go through those things, but just remember that when you're drawing the planometric shapes, just want to think about like basic shapes and then follow light logic. Okay. You grab your Nero pencils first, okay? That is the pencil you're using for this project. The Nero pencil is a wax-based pencil, and I'm gonna do this really quick. You will notice that the reason we use Nero pencils, right, is because they look like charcoal pencils. They're the same value. If I have like a graphite pencil up here, right, and I draw with my graphite, what is the biggest difference between graphite pencil and a charcoal pencil in terms of color? Anyone know? It is shiny, it is reflective, but what else?
Lighter.
It is gonna be always lighter, right? One is cool, and the other one is warm, actually, and that camera is totally not there. And the other one is warm. So when I'm drawing, this camera is showing that, right? All right, cool. When I'm drawing, the reason we use the Nero, right, is because it's actually a warm pencil that actually is in the same family as the charcoal pencils. Okay, so you're not going to see the separations of values as much. All right. The other reason we don't use graphite and charcoal, we don't mix them, is because if you use graphite first and then draw with charcoal on top, does anyone know what's going to happen? Charcoal is going to resist, right? Actually, the graphite's going to resist, I should say. Because the charcoal is a mineral, right? It kind of skips over it. Charcoal is a mineral that's mined, right? It's made from like oils, right? Graphite, graphite is a mineral that's mined. It's made from oils. Charcoal, how is charcoal made? Anyone know? Burn wood. So you can't mix carbon with like an oil-based element. It's like mixing water and oil literally together. They're not gonna like actually work together. So we can cheat it a little bit. Like I can make some of these like lighter values using a graphite pencil, which I'm gonna show you guys how to do. But most of the drawing has to be done using Neros and charcoals, okay? There is a reason that I don't start the drawing using a charcoal pencil. Can anyone tell me why? If I start with a charcoal pencil on cotton paper, no. Will it erase? I will say no. No matter what you do, there will always be a smudge there, okay? So the very first mistake that I see students do is that they pick up a charcoal pencil and think it is the same thing as a Nero pencil. And this is why I want to like emphasize this. This pencil looks exactly the same as, where's my charcoal? As this pencil. They're very hard to like separate and identify, right? I need to make note, the Nero pencil has like a silver band on it and it says Nero on it. I want to make sure that I'm using that one, okay? Don't accidentally pick up this pencil, try to make a mark, because that mark will never go away no matter what you do, okay? And if it happens in like a really important area, like the eyeball, your eyeball is gonna have like a line going through it, okay? All right, so we're gonna start with our Neros, okay? I pick up a number 5, and first thing I wanna do is just lay in as many values as I possibly can. I'm gonna lift this up just a little bit. And this pencil sharpener is always going to be out. The only thing that ever goes in this pencil sharpener are these wax pencils, these Nero pencils. Don't put charcoal pencils in there ever. You will break the sharpener, okay? You want to make sure that you always have a piece of paper under your hand. So I use a piece of tape. I did this before you guys came. I stick it on my clothing. Why do I want to stick it on my clothing? So it's less sticky. Because if there is stickiness on this tape, it's going to rip the paper, right? I want to use that and always have it underneath my hand so that my hand does not touch the paper. And the very first thing that I want to do is just lay in my values. And I lay in my values in like one specific direction and following all my value shapes. And the reason I do this is because I want to preserve my drawing. Because the very next step after this is charcoal dust. And the charcoal dust is going to kind of do its own thing. The important step for me is not getting all those details in and all those values in. The important step for me is getting her shapes correct. Why are her shapes correct? Why is it important, sorry, to get her shapes correct?
Because that's how it looks like her.
Yeah, exactly. We've been like talking about that for the last 2 weeks. It's how we can actually like utilize that facial structure and make it feel like the person. And if it was the arm, same thing. If it's the leg, same thing. It's all about shapes. So I follow my value shapes as a way to kind of guide my choices.
So this is the Nero pencil?
Yep, number 5 Nero pencil.
And the sketch under it is also
Sketch under it.
the, like the line. Of the
Oh, it's graphite, yeah. Sorry, 2H pencil, yeah. Or an HB. And when we're doing that graphite drawing, remember you're always following just the lights and the values. So when you're transferring using the projector, you just want to make sure that you have, like, I'll have extra pencils out too, but we're just going to be using a graphite pencil because it's really easy to erase if you make a mistake. The graphite pencil doesn't have any residual effect on the paper like a charcoal pencil does. So we use it just to kind of like keep everything safe.
Is it always going to be a number 5 Nero, or depending
So Neros are numbered 1 through 5, right? They're a little bit tricky because they're like their own numbering system. The number 5 is the hardest pencil, lightest pencil. The number 1 is the darkest pencil, it's like black. So anytime I start a drawing, I always want to start with the lightest pencil first because it gives me the biggest leeway to like make mistakes. So in a drawing, anytime I'm doing a drawing, I'm always thinking, how many mistakes am I gonna have and how do I mitigate those mistakes? Basically, you're trying to like protect yourself from making mistakes. And if I use a lighter pencil, it gives me a little bit more flexibility to kind of avoid some of those mistakes. The thing that I was talking to the other class about, and they were asking me, which I think was a good question,
is when I need to get darker, what do I do? Especially if you want to see like a separation in the value, right? Like if the values get too close. So like for instance, like her eye on this side, one of the things I could do is just like draw in the dark part of the eye first, because maybe I'm not sure where that is. And then I can come in after the fact and lay a lighter value on top. And the lighter value will just kind of like solidify the darker value above it. So, but I try not to draw more than 2 values at this stage, because I would just be wasting time, because as soon as I put the charcoal dust on, all these value decisions are gonna kind of get blasted away. All right, we're kind of doing this just to protect the drawing at this stage. Does anybody have any questions about what I'm doing? Okay.
Did you change the value of the pencil or?
Nope,
No?
it's still number 5.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm using the same pencil. Just putting a little bit more pressure on it when I'm doing the darker darks.
Okay, so that's the control of that.
Yeah. But I don't really want to like overdraw at this stage. Like I want to keep everything fairly light and fairly consistent. I'm basically using it as a way to map out her values.
How long are we gonna have to transfer our images with the projector?
Usually about 20 minutes. Yeah, just because we have so many students. In 20 minutes you can do a lot.
So right now you're doing the dark and the lighter values all in the same value because you don't want to do more than 2, right?
Yeah, and as soon as I like smash the charcoal dust on top of this, you're gonna see everything is gonna collide, and then I can pull out her lights, and then I can push her darks back in. So I'm just kind of creating like a midpoint, okay? And I think that's the hardest thing for most students to get their head around, is that this is like, it's still a drawing at this stage, right? It's not a rendering. We're really thinking about big shapes, really thinking about like moving through a drawing from like dark to light. So if I wanted some separation, I could add a little bit, like if I say, hey, this is like where the hair is, the shadow of the hair is. But even then, I don't want to go any more than that. And I do like to keep it pretty loose, and I like to make sure that most of my lines are running in the same direction. This, like right here, might be an issue, that little section, but I'll smooth it out when I get into the values. Okay, the biggest thing for me is like separating out anatomy. So like a section like her chin right here, I use like a very hard line because I don't want to lose that line. And then I might make it like a little bit darker underneath her chin, just to kind of push her head forward. If I push too hard with the Nero pencil, what's gonna happen is it's gonna create like a wax buildup, and then I won't be able to draw with charcoal underneath. So I wanna see the grain of the paper underneath my pencil, or else it's gonna get ruined. So make sure that you don't draw too hard, right? It's not a Nero pencil drawing, it is a charcoal drawing. The Nero is just like helping us right now at this stage.
Are you using the side of it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I kind of like,
It's charcoal and graphite?
not the Nero pencil, or just, are you talking about the process?
Process? Okay.
Process is charcoal and Nero, right? Yeah.
Oh.
The only thing that I'm doing with the graphite pencil is just the drawing, just this outline. Okay. So things like edges, I will make like a very dark bold line. So I know exactly where it is. I don't want to get too dark. Yeah, I know. I feel you, MJ.
No, I just.
Just kidding. I'm just kidding. You're good. Don't worry.
Right.
Okay, and then for all this hair, she's got a lot of it. I'm just gonna throw a value in, and I just wanna make sure my shape is correct. So I don't wanna lose this line, so I'll come in and just like draw through that edge. Not too dark, just want a clear edge. And I like texture in hair, so I'm gonna leave all these marks right now, and we'll come in and clean them up later, okay?
What if the hair is curly?
Same thing.
You would still do it straight like that, down?
No, you're gonna see the process is the same. There's actually a demo of my daughter's curly hair over there. And I do the exact same thing. Just following the shadow shapes and the lights on that hair specifically. Right. She actually has really curly hair, but she straightened it just for a few days. So hair, you don't need to be too specific about at this stage. You can see like I'm just really kind of just trying to get the shapes in. If there's like a major light source like there is right here, I'll try and like avoid overdrawing into there. Okay, and what it looks like it's going to be white is going to be covered in charcoal dust, so I'm not too worried about it right now at this stage. And this is going to be shirt, 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 shadow, shadow, shadow. And there's like a clothing, clothing, clothing. All right, so that's the first step. Does anyone have any questions about this step? You guys good? I'm gonna get my iPad really quick so I can take pictures. No questions so far? I'll fall asleep.
So like this is in the drawing stage still.
Still drawing stage, right? We're just trying to get like all those values into place.
So like mainly values and shapes.
Values and shapes are like the single most important thing for sure.
Cause like to me it kind of already feels like you're like making decisions on like how you want to like do the hair down the line based on the shapes that you place, or is it like not that?
I can't not help thinking ahead because of who I am and how many years I've been doing this. But like I do try to keep those decisions pretty like simple as much as I can, and not try to make too many advanced marks, if that makes any sense. So like even when I'm looking at her hair, you can see like these decisions. I think that's what you're talking about. I'm breaking apart into these values, so I know where they are. Okay, yeah. It's more important in the shadow and the light side than it is on the shadow side, because the shadow side, it's still way too light to even be concerned with. Okay. All right, you guys ready? Next step? All right, next step, charcoal. You got this charcoal stick right here. There it is right there, okay? I want to take this charcoal stick and I want to make charcoal dust. We do not buy charcoal dust because charcoal dust in a bag will gather humidity. And when it gathers humidity, that means it will gather moisture. And if it gathers moisture, it'll start breaking apart when you use it. My X-Acto knife was here somewhere. There it is. So we want to make our own charcoal dust, and there's a way to make charcoal dust and a bad way to make charcoal dust. So the good way to make charcoal dust all depends on how you point your X-Acto blade, okay? You want it pointing down, but like this, okay? And I want to drag the charcoal off of the charcoal stick downward. If I have my blade pointing down and I'm dragging it down the charcoal, what do you think is going to happen to my charcoal? It's going to make like little flicks of charcoal, okay? And those little flicks of charcoal, guess what they make? They make stripes, right? So I can take those little flicks and I can put it on my paper, and you're going to end up with like all these like little stripes and things that you cannot control, okay? So we want to make it as smooth as possible. So the trick is charcoal facing up, drag down, okay? Not charcoal. X-Acto facing up, drag down. All right, I'm gonna make some charcoal dust, and I'm gonna drag my X-Acto. I'm gonna keep it facing up.
So you basically the not sharp end.
The not sharpened. It's still sharpened.
But it's like less sharp.
No, it's always gonna be sharp. I'm using the blade.
You put the blade on it, but you don't point the blade in the direction you're going.
Point the blade up, drag down. Point the blade up, drag down.
Okay, I get it now.
Yeah. Point the blade up, right there, drag down. It'll take off a lot more charcoal. And then I rotate the charcoal around, like this. If I don't rotate the charcoal can break. That's the only reason I rotate it. You'll notice it starts creating a bow in it. And then it gets a little weak in the middle. So that is why I rotate the charcoal around. You don't need that much charcoal dust. A little will go a long way. So that's really about all I need for like almost a whole drawing, okay? All right. And then next thing we want to do is make this little pad of paper. Boop, right there, okay? This little pad of paper is actually a little tricky. So I'm going to show you guys right here. I'm going to provide this for you. We have like rolls and rolls of what we call shop towels. You're going to take 2 sheets. I'll show it on the screen. Of shop towels, and you fold it in half. Okay, I'm actually going to give this to you. You can record it. 2 sheets. You're going to fold it in half, like a hamburger. Fold it in half. Hot dog. Okay, until it becomes like one long strip, just like that. Okay, does that make sense? And then I take it and I fold it in half again. Okay, and then I take it and I put my finger in the middle of it. I feel the same way, Lynn. And I fold it.
Focusing so hard.
Yeah, and I fold it in half again until it makes like this flat little pad for me. Okay, does everyone see that? And that way I can have something to like hold it from. And then pad, hold it, 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 pad. All right, and I'm gonna take this over here and I'm gonna move it through my charcoal dust. And I'm gonna wipe it on my drawing with all that charcoal on it. Is that what I wanna do? I would destroy my drawing, okay? So I want you to look at this and pay attention to this. This I'm trying to get off of my charcoal pad, okay? So I'm gonna take this back to my newsprint, and this is why there is always newsprint on my tabouret. So when you come to work in class, you're gonna see a stack of newsprint. You wanna make sure you put newsprint on your tabouret beforehand, okay? So you have like a surface. And I'm gonna wipe off all this excess charcoal. And I'm also gonna look at my drawing and ask myself, how dark or light do I need it to be? And this is 100% based on the person's skin color, all right? I'm not being racist. It is based on the person's skin color. Why? Darker value, more charcoal. Lighter value, less charcoal, okay? So let's just be clear. Fire ringing. All right, and then I wanna make sure that I have like a really even tone. I always have like a scrap sheet of paper, but over here, I'm gonna draw it in. This is what happens when I don't like pay attention to how I'm accumulating charcoal. And this is really hard to get rid of. So what I'm looking for is something that's really, really smooth. So on my scrap piece of paper, I take my drawing pad and I start to like smooth out the surface, okay? Until I get something that shows me much more like an articulated feel, right? So less patchy, much more smooth, okay? It's not hard to do, but the biggest mistake students make is they take their little charcoal pad and they crinkle it and they put it in their hand. It looks like a little ball of something. And then they make like a mark, and that mark tends to ruin their whole drawing that they've just spent like an hour on, okay? Usually it happens at the very early stages, so it's fine. You can always restart, but do you really want to restart? Probably not, okay? So this is a really important step. Make sure that the right amount of charcoal is on your little paper towel, and look at your drawing, right? I always start the charcoal dust application in the shadows. Why in the shadows?
It's lighter the way you do it.
Yes, but there's also another reason. If I make a mistake in a shadow shape, does it matter? No, you can cover it, okay? If I make a mistake and I'm like drawing right on top of her forehead, then I'll have like a line of black on her forehead, then you're kind of screwed. So I'm gonna start right there, and I'm gonna draw right on top of everything. And you're gonna see all that work that I did gets like disappears, okay? And this is why we use the vine charcoal, not the vine charcoal. This is why we use the Nero charcoal. The Nero charcoal is just a placeholder, so I don't lose my drawing. Does everyone kind of see how that works? And now I have saved myself a whole bunch of time because I've taken all those marks, and now I've made like a mid-tone and a dark tone. Now I gotta start doing is put in the darks and put in the lights. So the very first step that I wanna do, I wanna smooth this out a little bit, right here. The very first step that I wanna do when I start drawing is erase my lights out, okay? So first we put in our darks, then we erase our lights. Why is it so important to erase your lights? What do you think is gonna happen to this paper the more I add charcoal to it? It's gonna get stained, right? Like this area right here is never gonna go back to white. So if I keep my whites white, you are preserving that value relationship. So you always wanna put in your whites first, okay? Your highlights. So I use my electric eraser. I'm gonna use my kneaded eraser, and the very first thing that I wanna do is take a picture before I forget. So you guys don't forget this.
For the mid-tone, is there like a place on the picture that you can point to, like what tone you're aiming for?
Yes, give me 1 second. Mid-tone I'm aiming for is like right here. Yeah. Because this is technically shadow. Shadowy.
But not
Shadow
like that,
fine.
'cause, like right here on her forehead, it's kind of like lighter,
That's light.
So like this is orange.
Yeah, I'm kind of like right here, right where it crosses from dark to light. Especially for Simone, because she's got like my skin, it's kind of darker. It's kind of a tricky foundation to kind of build. Yeah. Yeah, it's actually harder when you're like right in the middle of a gray value than it is if you're like really, really dark or really, really light. Because the nuances are much, like the nuance between like this light and the actual highlight is very subtle. So I'm gonna like emphasize, I'm gonna make it pop so I can see those values a little bit more clearly. All right, so I wanna come in and I'm gonna look at her face and I'm gonna be like, oh, it's so beautiful. I just want those lights. All right, I'm gonna come over, I'm gonna find where those lights are. And if you've never used an electric eraser, know that when you use it, it's gonna kick back at you. So you have to hold it really, really strong in your hand and be very, very intentional with it. It's not like a soft eraser by any means, right? But it will allow me to get like details in very, very quickly. Is that camera still recording? Cool. And you got like this in frame?
It's zoomed in.
All right, cool. You're perfect. I don't need to talk to you. You know what you're doing. And you can see how all of a sudden she'll start to like come to life. It's kind of like a funny optical illusion that your eye plays with you. And then I'm going to take my kneaded and I'm going to create those softer transitions. I'm gonna like build a shape into my kneaded eraser and make it like a little point. Everyone kind of see that? Okay. And I'm just going to come in and I'm going to soften out those lights. So I'm drawing with the kneaded eraser at this stage. Don't worry, we will take a break after this. So what looks like a really, really high key highlight, I'm actually blending out with the eraser. I'm not using a pencil, okay? I'm gonna soften up her nose. Showing a little highlight there. Soften up her cheek. And then soften up her chin. I'm not even worried about the hair at this stage. You can see I'm just kind of like leaving it. But there are like lights right through here, so I'll just kind of like make sure I make a note of them. And there's some lights over here. Okay, so that's how the lights are going to kind of start to get developed. Does everyone kind of see how it's starting to feel like three-dimensional? Okay. Next step is the hard step, is the step that scares everybody. So, I have made my midtones using my Vine charcoal, right? I have made my midtones using, not my Vine charcoal, did I say Vine charcoal? I have made my midtones using my charcoal dust and my Nero, okay? Combination of those. What do you use the Nero for? To protect your drawing, right? To just lay in your values. I have used it for no other reason other than a lay-in tool, okay? We can use the Nero when we get to it to kind of create like our gray values, but right now, it's just a tool to protect my drawing. Charcoal on top, eraser on top of that, right? And then I want to go in and I want to start working out my darks. And your Vine charcoal is kind of the very first step because the Vine charcoal is actually a little bit lighter than the charcoal dust, right? And you're going to see it's kind of like a mid-tone gray, okay? So even though it looks really dark when it goes on the surface, I wipe it off and it's not very permanent. 50% of it's going to come off the form, okay? Does that make sense to everybody? Okay. I like to have a really sharp vine, so I just snap it and come in. And I'm going to look at her face, and I'm going to start with her cheek. And I can barely see where that edge of my vine is, but I can still see it.
Did you use the Nero?
I'm using Vine charcoal.
You said the edge of.
Did I say the edge of? Yeah, I'm using the edge of
Oh.
Vine charcoal,
Oh.
right? Really hard edge because I want to find that really clear line. But I'm following my Nero drawing, yes.
Is there any particular reason you started there?
It's really important for me to see where the light meets the shadow. For me, it's not like so intentional for students to know this, but for me, that's how I think. So I always like to push up against the edges that I can see shapes really clearly and not work out in like this ambiguous space. I want to like really clearly define my drawing, if that makes sense. Yeah. And because her eye is like so sensitive, meaning that she has like a lot of like little bits of detail in that whole area, I need to be really careful not to draw over areas that I think might be value, but could be light. So I'm always looking at my photo reference because I don't always trust what I've drawn. You always want to go back to the source is ultimately what I'm saying. So she has some pretty abstract shapes, and I need to trust that that shape is actually an eyeball and not try to draw an eye the way that I see it. And that's hard for students sometimes, like just to draw what you see in the photo and not draw what you think you see as an eyeball. Okay, as soon as we finish this step, I'll take a little break and we'll come back. So this is going to roll right into her hair. You'll see how I speed up when it comes to like big shadow masses. Does anyone have any questions about what I'm doing? Conceptually, it all makes sense so far.
Why are you using the vine charcoal instead of just charcoal pencil?
I will show you the difference. Rotate. Okay. Charcoal pencil. If I take charcoal pencil and I make a mark. Okay. If I take fine charcoal and I make a mark. And I try to blend those two shapes out. Where's my blender tool? You can't see it over here, so I'm gonna draw it like it's right next to her so you can see it. Here's my vine charcoal. Here's my charcoal pencil, okay? And I can make them both as dark, right? What do you think is gonna happen to the charcoal? It's not gonna move. It's gonna stay right there. Okay, what do you think is gonna happen to the vine charcoal? It'll blend, okay? Here's the other thing I want to think about. If I want to erase through both of these, and my electric eraser is very powerful, right? Look at the difference in value between those two, right? So like, if I make a mistake, I will never really get to white. But here I can get somewhat to white and I can even erase it even more and try to get back to the paper, okay? So I use vine charcoal for the sake of my students, to make it easier for them, right? I don't use vine charcoal at home, just to answer your question. I actually go straight to regular charcoal most of the time, if I'm doing a drawing like this. So it is student-safe charcoal. Really, it's just about like getting a mid-tone value down. It really isn't student-safe charcoal, I'm just lying. It's about getting a mid-tone value down with a lot more control.
You just do this layer, this part of it, like within two values of each other.
Yep. I always kind of think about like two values as like the core. Drawing kind of like precipice. Like if I can keep everything pretty predictable in two values, then I'm always gonna have like a better drawing in the end because the values are gonna be more in the same family. It's almost like a painting concept. You don't want to use too many colors in the beginning stages. You want to kind of keep all your values or colors in the same family as well. That way it kind of feels more homogeneous. So her hair comes out right here.
Is there any like thought process behind like the specific markings in the hair, or you just like?
No, just kind of like making marks that kind of feel like they're what her hair is doing. Yeah. And I don't want the marks in the hair to be too concise. I do want them to be a little bit more organic because hair doesn't really have a predictable pattern to it. It just kind of falls. So if my marks do the same thing, it'll make the hair feel a little bit more consistent and cohesive. And for this side, I just want darks. So I'm just gonna like, and I'm not gonna worry about the edge of her face. I'm gonna kind of stay away from it right now. And I'll come clean up that edge a little bit later.
Why?
Because vine charcoal won't let me make a really hard edge. Yeah. It's gonna break apart. So I need to make that edge with actual charcoal a little bit later. Okay, so that's where I would start. The next thing I want to show you guys, and then we'll kind of blend it and take a little break, is how to make your own stump. So, I showed you this little dude right here, okay? I don't ever buy stumps. I grab a piece of paper towel from over there, okay? I'm gonna take that paper towel, and I'm gonna fold it in half. If you ever played like the game of football, it's kind of the same concept. I'm gonna fold it in half again, fold it in half again, and I wanna make sure that it is flat, okay? And I'm gonna take my paper, I'm gonna make a little triangle out of it. Okay. And then I want to take tape, make sure it's really, really, really tight. This one's a little loose. I'm gonna fold it a little bit better. There we go. Tape. There you are. I should have done this before, if that's okay. Keeping it really, really tight, I'm gonna take tape and I'm gonna wrap it around one side and around the other side so it doesn't like unfold, okay? So I have this little triangle that I have, okay? And
Is that the paper or the gloss?
paper towel,
That was, oh,
just regular paper towel.
okay.
I can't find my sandpaper pad, but it was right here. But basically what I want to do at the end of the day is take my sandpaper pad and I sand off one side of it, just so it's soft, okay?
Can you pass around the one that you used already?
The one I use, I'm going to use right now. But you guys can come grab it later, okay? All right, so once I do that, I'm going to come and I'm going to like use this to like really softly blend in those values. And you can see what you think is going to be black is in fact not going to be black at all. It's going to be like a light gray. And if I put up her photo, which I took it down, I can use this as reference. And I like to use this because the soft edge of the hair creates like a really good starting point when I use the vine charcoal. And it helps me to establish those value relationships a little bit better. But I'm still paying attention to shapes. I do tend to move in like a circular pattern so I can mix the charcoal around without any like hard lines. If I do this, right, I'm gonna see those stripes in my drawing. If I move in like a circular pattern, it kind of helps to keep things soft. Didn't do the upper part of the head, so the upper part of the head is gonna have like a little white gap right there. That's okay. Tell me how you really feel, guys.
On the edge of my teeth.
That's wonderful. Okay, and then this is where I'll slow down a little bit when I get into drawing her face. Just for cheekbones, it's really soft. And you can see what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to draw to the lightest point in that darkest shape, right? Like that's what I'm trying to match. So after I get this vine charcoal in, I'm not gonna touch it, more or less, if it's the right value. Everything else goes darker around it, and that's what's gonna make it feel three-dimensional, okay? Does that make sense to everybody? Okay. So I don't wanna go to the darkest point, because what do I have to do if I go to the darkest point? I gotta start erasing out, and that's the last thing I wanna do, right? I wanna build up slowly, so it's kind of like an additive process, okay? So this is why we kind of go through the steps using the materials in class, because I want you to be very familiar with the fact that like you want to use these steps, these values, these materials in order of your steps. You don't want to like jump to a charcoal pencil, which has happened so many times, and people will ruin their drawings and they're like, now I got to start all over, and I'm like, I don't know what else to do because I can't help you. You got all these black marks all over your drawing and that area might not be black, you know? In my drawing, I was being a little lazy. I'm not gonna lie, I'm tired. And usually I would be a lot more attentive to like shapes. So now I have to come in and like fix my mistakes, which is basically bad Joe. Because it's looking less and less like my model. Yeah, and she's got 1,000 drawings of her, so she won't really care. But like, I want to make sure that you guys can see what I'm trying to do. So I'm coming in with my Nero, like a number 3 pencil. I'm just fixing like all the very quick decisions I make. Which just reminds me, you gotta be patient. Because no matter how much experience you have, if you do not draw according to what you see, it will look like pee. You can quote me. No?
You should drop a mixtape.
You guys are, yeah, right. The dynamics of this class, the severity of difference between the previous, it's just like night and day. You guys are all like, wah, wah.
What number pencil is this?
And then my other class will just be like, Joe, that was horrible. Number 3. All right, so I can see it on top of the charcoal.
You know, we can make a birthday party depressing sometimes.
You know, I'm gonna leave it with you guys. I'm not gonna like blame anybody for anything. Every classroom has its own vibe for sure. I think the biggest thing is coming in and like, without doing any more work, just making sure my drawing is correct. Which it like moved around a lot on me when I applied the fine charcoal. So I don't want that much movement. Like it needs to still be pretty accurate. So I'm coming in and just like finding like her major landmarks. Like where's her nostril? And like her nose is definitely not that big. So this shadow needs to come in like all the way to there. She's gonna be like, why'd you give me a big nose, Papa? Papa, don't you love me, Papa? No, I hate you. Alright, and in any demo, like, I'm never gonna finish the whole thing. There's just not enough time to do a whole drawing in a classroom, and to also show you guys how to do the anatomy. So the key is just to like walk you through like all the steps and develop out an area to like near finish, so you can see how I would like work on like one specific section. Okay. But now you can see those lines are really like important, is to like establishing her shadow shapes a little bit more clearly, and kind of helping to clarify in my head like what I'm looking at as well. Okay. Her hair over here looks good, and she's got like a little seam. Her hair goes this way.
The area where her hair parts?
Mm-hmm.
You said it was a Nero charcoal, right?
Nero pencil, not charcoal.
I meant,
Mm-hmm.
no, I got the charcoal brand and stuff.
It's okay. The one that I'm using is a Nero pencil, yes. Okay, does that make sense to everyone? Okay, really important to do that. If you ever get lost, just stop and then collaborate and listen, because you're on a brand new mission. No, nobody got that. Thanks, man. Appreciate it. I can only count on you, really, and Casey. Sometimes Elaine. All right. All right, so I'm gonna like take a picture of this just so you guys have it. So fix your mistakes.
Demo after the Ecorche is due. Oh.
Okay. All right. So I don't really need to do anything over here. If I wanted to blend it out, there's a trick. If I want to make it smoother, I get the dry piece of my paper towel, right? And I actually use like the clean end, and I just use it to smooth. And you can see how it will smooth out those areas and get rid of any like excess debris. And that's being done in combination with the vine charcoal that's already there. So I can make these like really nice transitions, and I can come into her forehead and start to kind of like grade some of these values. Don't want to over blend anything, because over blending is much worse than just having like some really strong edge decisions made. So don't go crazy and try and like over blend. I don't want to see like that, okay? But I'm still leaving her lights in there. I'm still kind of like focusing on those shapes and making sure the shapes are really clear, okay? Does that make sense so far? Okay, I think the biggest thing that students have trouble with is like getting darker. So I want to pick up a 2B, I'm gonna pick up an HB. I always like to start a little bit less dark, because if I make a mistake, then I can correct my mistake, and we always want to be able to like go back. So HB charcoal pencil, I'm just looking for one that might be sharp, because I can't find my little sharpening tool. Where'd you go? Where'd you go? There's HB. There's HB. Cool. All right, HB charcoal. And I'm gonna start where I know we're gonna go darker. Come back. And that is like right here on the hair. And now I'm gonna like focus on making an edge. And if I do this really carefully, if I just push really carefully on the shadow shapes, I won't do it on her face. That tape should be okay, okay? I'm gonna go right in. This is why I put that line in there. If you wanna zoom into this, you can. But I'm gonna go right into where that line is. And I'm gonna really carefully kind of like push into those values. What pencil am I using again? HB charcoal, yes. So, am I using a vine to make hard edges? No, vine cannot make hard edges, like doesn't want to. As soon as you push it into the paper, it'll like kind of like spread out a little bit and get soft. But with an HB pencil, I can make these hard edges and I can get those blacks really dark. Okay. And then I'm going to do a little trick, which is something that I don't really do, but I will show you when I need it. I will use it. I'm going to grab a really hard narrow pencil, and because this is such like a hard edge, I'm going to draw right on top of the charcoal, and I'm going to like solidify that edge, and take that charcoal and kind of smooth it out. And I don't do this that often. It is like a trick I only use when it's necessary. It is necessary right now. I'm using a number 4 Nero. And I'm going to come in, and with that number 4, I'm going to do the exact same thing on her brow. And I want to be really careful when I do this because once I do this, I can never really go back over that charcoal. So I need to make sure that it's like not a wrong decision. And I can't really go over it because it will kind of like make the charcoal like a wax surface, and that wax surface is gonna like resist everything. Now I wanna, that's quick reflex. I wanna erase that little bit right there because it's not in the drawing. And then if I want more control, I'm gonna take my kneaded eraser. I like to like form it into a point, and I'm just gonna like blend out that edge right there. Okay. And this is my little trick. So I'm gonna grab my 2H pencil, and now if I have like mid-tone values, like these really subtle ones right here, I'll use the 2H pencil just to kind of like get me like just very fine values. And you can see like her light is like kind of centered right here on the eyelid. So it's like when I'll come in, I'll make details. Okay. I don't know where it went, but I had a little Q-tip. Hello, Mr. Q-tip. There you are. Okay. And it's like a cosmetic Q-tip, and I will use that to kind of push in like transition values, like basically smooth areas out that I need more control with. Okay. And all this is to say I'm trying to get that eyebrow to look as accurate to this young lady as I possibly can. So it feels like her, because that edge is like a really important aspect of her likeness, right? Because that edge is all anatomy, it's all bone. So if that bone doesn't feel like her, which is why I don't do it with fine charcoal, which is why I do it with something I can control like a hard charcoal, it's not gonna look like, the drawing's not gonna look like her. Okay, so combining all my tools, Nero pencil, charcoal for the darks, and I'm gonna go back in with my pencil and just put in her eyelid. And all that is basically white. I'm not even gonna touch that surface right here. I'm actually just gonna put in just a little bit of the shadow for her nose. I'm gonna like overemphasize it. It's not that dark, but I'm gonna leave it that dark. And then I'm gonna come in with my charcoal, with my pencil, sorry, not the charcoal. And right on top of the charcoal, I'm gonna make that mid-tone gray that I wanna see. And this is one of those moments where you can combine materials like a graphite pencil and charcoal and get like in-between values. So I can see those relationships a little bit more clearly. She shouldn't have a line right there, but I'm gonna just leave that line right there, just for the sake of the demo. Okay. Coming back in again, I'm gonna use a clean side of my little blender page and just kind of like a blender piece and just knock that back. Okay, does that make sense to everyone so far? Okay. She has a really tight light source right here. I don't know how I'm gonna get it, so I'm gonna try. I'm gonna first sharpen my little eraser because that light source is really important. I want like a tip, and I can also like cut this out of an eraser. I'll show you how.
Is that the same Daiso?
Sorry, what was that?
Is that the same Daiso electric eraser?
No, mine is much meaner. It costs like 5 times as much. It's got a higher RPM, so it's gonna cost more money. And sometimes just something as little as like a little light source like that one right there is super important for like making that eye feel like it's gonna pop. Okay. All right, so let's go to the other side. So we can see kind of like a wide range of grays all through here. Now we're gonna work on like a larger area. You can see how I'm kind of like getting in the blacks. If I was to do the hair, right, with a little bit more detail, I would really want to like be a little bit more fluid with some of these marks. But I'm gonna let the gray underneath those black marks make the highlights in the hair. I don't want to erase those highlights out, right? I want to draw around them as much as possible. Okay, so that's kind of like my mindset when I'm doing hair. I'm drawing from like the back of the hair, the lightest light, and then bringing it to the darkest dark. A lot of the times, which is a little bit more conceptual, but I think you guys can handle it. You guys are smart kiddos. You can see how much darker this charcoal is going to get. And I have to be really careful not to make marks that I do not want to be permanent. And that's why like I went in first with the Nero pencil, right? And just kind of clarified where my drawing edge is, okay? So on the other side, I can do the same thing. I could say, you know what, her hair is pretty dark over here. If I'm really bold, I'll actually pick up this big chunk, right, and do the exact same thing, but it will go a lot faster and just kind of put in all those darks. And that's totally valid if you're having like a lot of negative space. You could totally use the charcoal chunk, right, and then just blend it in, and it's gonna make like your darkest dark. Like nothing is really blacker than that charcoal. So for all of her hair over here that's really, really dark black, the HB charcoal or the chunk of charcoal, totally fine. Both are valid. Both have those uses. And I really want to focus on edge control when I'm looking at something like the side of a profile or the side of a plane. Okay. I can't really determine how long some of the demos are going to take. Sometimes it's like a pose is a little bit more complicated and it requires sensitivity, and I have to be sensitive to her needs. So all this, the shadow's already there, and I want to build on top of it. So now I'm not going to use any charcoal at all. I'm actually going to pull up Nero pencils to do those layers. So I'm going to pull up my number 3 Nero. I'll make sure it's sharpened. The number 3 because it's like darker than everything else. Did you say why?
No, I said nice.
Nice, okay, thank you. And the number 3 because it's not like super black, it's kind of like a gray black, and you can see how like if I'm combining the two values together, we'll start to make like just a subtly darker value, okay, and that's what I want to do. I want to build in the darks that are already there.
What pencil?
Number 3. And that number 3 will kind of build a good secondary value. And it goes all the way into her eye socket. And if I don't feel like it's getting dark enough, I can pull up a number 2 or a number 1, but for right now it's fine. You could also add more vine charcoal in those areas and they will get a little bit darker. But I think everyone at this point probably wants to see me control the marks. So you can see how I can build that up. If I want to go back into my vine, I can take my vine and I can just really carefully like throw it on top. All right, grab my stumpies. And you can see by combining those values, I can create like troughs in the shadow shapes. Make things feel deeper, darker, like my soul, evil.
So this is kind of in between the HB charcoal and the vine?
Yeah, exactly. Very important, like technical tool to understand. Like, how do I get darker? Pick up your Nero. How do I get darker than the Nero? Mix it back in with some vine. What if those don't work? Use a darker Nero pencil. What if that doesn't work? Then you got to use charcoal. So it's kind of like what's happening in my brain when I'm thinking, like, how dark does it need to be? What tools can I use to get to that value? And if the slower I go, the more control I have, which is so important. You know, if you want control over the marks you're making, you can't draw fast. But now I'm kind of switching into the rendering mindset, I would call it, because I'm trying to like undulate between really, really subtle shifts in value. And I'm doing it in a way that's gonna like push her eye into the socket. Does that make sense? You guys seen that? Is everything okay? Okay. You guys want me to turn off the lights or can you see the screen? Okay. So I'm gonna pick up my HB. I'm gonna make this dark mark for her lips. All right, and then I'm gonna do the same thing in her eyes. And I'm not just gonna go through and like make a big black line. It's gonna look like she has some funky mascara on. I just wanna find those marks where they are darkest. I don't want to push too hard. I want to be really careful. So it is a pretty subtle transition. I'm going to come in, I'm going to poke in her eyebrows. Okay, and you can see how her eye socket's starting to get three-dimensional. Okay. So just try to pay as close attention to that as I can. So I have to pay attention to reflected light, to where the shadows are, all those things that we talked about. Now, her head is like her nose, right? Her forehead has like these mid-tone transitions, and so does her cheek. So here's my 2H pencil. All right, really carefully, just gonna give her some blush on her cheek. All right, and I'm gonna come in, and I mean that literally, like I'm gonna give her red on her cheek by making her cheek grayer. I'm gonna give her like redness on her forehead by making her forehead grayer. And I'm gonna leave the light around her forehead showing.
So like for this drawing right now, like is the darkest part that you're comparing it to like the side of her face on the left?
The darkest part is gonna be,
Okay, because like I feel like there's sometimes a problem like for when I do my own stuff too, like when you put in the hair you realize like oh everything's too light.
that's why I put in the hair simultaneously to working on the face. Notice like these are actually the steps that I would do it in, right? I'm never just working on one area. I'm always working on multiple areas at the same time because I'm trying to like relate how those areas work. And then when I get to a certain stage where maybe like this is all black, then I can start just like slowly going from one side to the other or from top down, whatever I do. But when I'm at the early stages, you want to kind of build it up simultaneously. It's really important, yeah. That's like actually a really important thing to kind of mention, which I forgot, is that's like the biggest habit that I see that affects students most negatively is that they render, right? Just one area. That eye can be beautiful, but what happens is that eye always kind of gets out of shape and wobbly in relationship to everything else because they're not relating it. So it's a value thing and also like a proportion thing, right? You always want to be comparatively drawing. I think it's just a good habit to get into. So yeah, good point. What time is it? Does anybody have that?
2:37.
Okay, so we got about 45 minutes or so. Okay. So let me get her lips in, but you can see how like now her forehead is kind of like there. And then we'll work on the skull. And I'll kind of talk to you guys about those concepts. All right, we got the light still in there. I need to define like some anatomical stuff that's gonna happen over time. Like the base of her nose. There's a little light, so I want to separate that. She's got this really strong shadow that comes down. So I can use a Nero pencil to kind of push that out. To push it back actually and make her nose come out farther. Just by adding a little bit of value under it, it's going to be more dimensional. And her nose kind of comes in and over and out and down. Okay. And then the lips. Okay, so she's got pretty subtle lips. And then if there's anything particular you guys want me to draw, like if you want me to spend more time on the hair or anything like that, just let me know and I'll do it before we're done for today. So the highlights, I want to get those highlights back. If you don't have like a paintbrush or anything like that, I just kind of like use the clean side of the fabric and just kind of wipe off any like charcoal dust I have, eraser dust I have. Okay.
I'd be interested in seeing like the right part of her face, like blending it into the hair.
Hair? Yep,
Yeah.
for sure.
And then also you mentioned like the white ink to
Uh-huh. We're gonna do that with the skull.
Oh.
Yeah. All right, so let's do the hair. I think that's more important probably than the lips right now. So lips are gonna be like right here. I would use charcoal just to kind of get the shadow shapes. There's gonna be like a little bit of charcoal right through here. It's gonna kind of like descend down, and then the rest of it I would just do in like a Nero pencil, okay? So I would do the same thing with her hair. I'd first want to like mark off like where her brow is gonna be. So her brow comes down like this, comes in like right here. And then I'm gonna make a mark and say, okay, well that's where the shadow shapes for her hair are gonna start. So I'm always doing the, I guess like the positive first. Like I would call the white the negative in this regard for me. How I'm thinking about it, maybe not, I don't know. There's like a country version of that song.
What?
Oh, we completely toned out.
I know, I'm listening to the song, it's like a country version of another song. I hear random stuff, what can I say? Question?
What's the pencil again?
HB charcoal.
Did you use the regular B pencil? I mean charcoal?
Not yet. If I don't feel like it needs to get that much darker, I won't. Yeah. The hair needs to get a little bit darker in some areas, like right here. But right now I'm just trying to like kind of get these patterns in. You're gonna see like all I do is like break up the charcoal to let the lights underneath kind of shine through. And then some sections I'll simplify it because I don't want it all to be this busy. If it's all that busy, it's gonna be really hard to like visualize what's happening. And ultimately her hair isn't like really well lit and it wasn't really taken care of when we photographed it. So I don't just want to like draw what we see, what I see. I want to like make it into something better ultimately, or else it's just gonna feel like fuzz.
The hair is usually what I'm the most concerned about.
What you're most concerned about?
Yeah.
Here's the easiest part. Because you can't really screw it up. You can screw up an eye, you know? If the eye's in the wrong spot or if it looks wrong, it won't look right. But hair is just hair.
Better to mess up the hair than the eye.
Better to mess up the hair than the eyes. It's just gonna look messy.
If the model that we have is like wearing glasses,
Hmm.
do we have to include that as well?
I would just draw whatever's in your photo. You don't want to make anything up. Yeah.
Okay.
If you try and like draw out the photo or draw it out of the picture, you're not really gonna know what you're looking at.
That's not what I'm saying. I'm just mentally prepared because
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I'm gonna do the eyes first or the glasses.
I don't even think about it as a first. I just draw the glasses while I'm drawing the eyes.
Okay.
Yeah. So does this make sense how I'm kind of building it up? Okay. I'll take a picture. I am like pretty aggressive with hair, probably more so than most people. So like I come in after I've done this, I just destroy everything. And there's a reason, and you'll see why. So I spend all this time and I'm like, destroy, destroy. You'll see these little lights, right? And that's actually what I want to see, right? I don't want it to be like perfect. And my marks are gonna be very hard. They're like harsh and they look somewhat intentional. I don't want them to feel intentional because hair is very unintentional. You know, it doesn't like intentionally hang there. It just kind of does its thing because of gravity. So there's a little bit of back and forth, like accident intention that happens with my marks. I think it's really kind of crucial to making hair feel healthy, like a healthy part of your drawing. That's why I wanted to take the picture before I destroyed this, because it's hard to see how I got to this point from those marks. And now I'm going to blend in those shadows into her cheek. Okay. So that's where I start, and then I'm going to come in. Alright, charcoal pencil. This is a B that you were asking about.
So like for the cheek, like
Mhm.
you don't have to render it, but like going through the process, you do like the fine charcoal, blend it out, and then like the mirror pencils to like add in control for the darker parts,
Mm-hmm.
and then graphite if it's lighter.
Yep. And that's it. And I don't have to do anything more to this cheek, really. Like, it's just gonna feel like it's a cheek with everything else around it. Okay. There's a little bit of patch of white right there that I'll fix later, but I wouldn't worry about it now. It's kind of like happening just because of the way I laid it in. So I'm gonna like put in some like little stripies for hair, little flyaways, which I think are like so crucial.
So like for the reasoning for why you wouldn't have to like render the cheek anymore, would you say it's like because it's like in the shadow and it's like less
It's just a
visible?
flat value, yeah.
Yeah, I guess because like you did spend a lot of detail doing like the nose and the eyes and doing all the minuscule parts.
Because this is like, sell the face, sell the face, sell the face. Ah, it doesn't even. So these are gonna like create the forms that are gonna make everything else read. If you go look at the demos back there, you're gonna notice like I don't ever draw the cheek in. I just get the value in, and then it's gonna read as like a whole thing. Yeah. The only reason you're paying attention to these is because the drawing's unfinished. It feels unfinished because you see these big inconsistent gaps. But as soon as the hair gets laid in, this is gonna feel resolved. It just kind of happens. Yeah. And right now, like everything I made like a lot darker than what it is, so I can lighten it up. Right? So she's got some like pretty strong lights and pretty strong like shadow shapes. So I can come in and just find like a couple like sections.
Honestly, he has to focus mostly on the last part.
And then I'm going to show you a trick. Okay. So I take my white eraser, this little dude right here, and for her hair specifically, I need like a really sharp edge. So I'm going to cut a triangle out of it, and the triangle will look a little bit like that. Okay. I can take that triangle and then I can go in. And I can start to find like lights. Usually it's a little bit easier to do that. It's kind of like sticking right now to the paper. But what I'm looking for are like little like stripes. So I'll cut through some of these like highlights. And now I'm just going to use my number 3 Nero, and then this is where I'll start like rendering stuff. And I'm going to get these values like all kind of grayed down because she doesn't really have like intense whites. And I want to just kind of like draw in the direction of the hair. So just kind of focusing just right here. Do you see how that starts looking like that right there? Okay. So I'm cutting through the lights and the shadows in a way that I'm trying to keep it like consistent to the movement that's happening in the photo. And I think it's always important to like cut through shapes. So if I see a shape that looks too perfect, I'll actually break it up to make it look like there's a follicle of hair like falling on top of it. So in all this, I would kind of render out just to kind of like make a smooth transition. And then hair, hair, higher. Does that kind of make sense? This like little section right here? Okay. Does everyone kind of get that? Okay. So it takes a little bit of time to build up. You can see like these hair follicles, they're actually part of the drawing. I will come in and this is when I'll pull like, this is the rare time I'll pull like the number 1 Nero pencil if I have it. If I don't, I'll do right here. Okay. And when I want something that's dark but I can control, I'll use the number 1. And I will like make like little hair follicles. I'll actually do it for her eyebrows too. It comes out a little bit farther. So these, she's got little flyaways that kind of like hit her cheeks. Okay. All right. So it's going to take me a little while to develop all that out. Like I know I shouldn't have like brought her in because she always takes me a while to draw because she is, well, she's my daughter, but she's also like got such a soft edged face, and soft edges take much longer to do.
The biggest misnomers that people try to do, especially students, is they try to make stuff up. And in reality, like professional artists, we don't make that much stuff up. We actually always have study or like photo reference or something to kind of go by and then build that knowledge base up. There's always something behind the scenes kind of giving us answers. Because I don't have the faculty, and I don't even know many of my artist friends that do, to like memorize things, right? I don't have this spell memorized in every single view, every single collection. So the first thing I want to point out is that we have 2 skulls here. Pick them up, take pictures of them, okay? And when I'm looking at the skull, I want to make sure it's doing what? Facing in what direction? Direction of your model, right? In your drawing. Direction of your drawing. So drawing doesn't really have directions 5. So first thing I want to do is just make sure that the skull, as I'm looking at it, is actually facing the direction we're going. The model I bought one of these, I have it at home. And my head comes off, but I don't think that one does. So we only have two big ones, we don't have smaller ones. So, pass it around. Everyone's going to be working on their anatomy at different points in time, or you can just take a picture anytime, like during class. The second thing I want to do is think about light, right? And light is hitting her face in a very particular way, right? It's not coming from the top, it's not coming from the back. And if it was coming from the back, it would be very lame, it's the same. It is actually coming from the front. So I want to make sure that it's not too hot. Rotate this so that it is doing the exact same thing. These two totally stupid. It is doing the exact same thing as my model. It turns the light, it's going to go down, it's going to tilt, and it needs to be related by her. Okay. And you can see how it's going to hit the lights, it's going to hit the face, it's going to hit the cheekbone right here, that's the zygomatic bone. It's going to hit the orbit of the mouth and the brow. So I want to kind of mimic that. Okay. So that's the first thing that we want to do is use photo reference. Okay, don't just make it up. Right. The other thing I want to point out is that the Duralar is a very different material. This is Duralar in the paper, right? This is actually plastic. Right? Not plastic. I'm going to pass it around so you guys can feel it. And it's actually going to pick up charcoal from underneath it. So once you're completely done with your drawing, I'm just going to spray fix the drawings. You can do it outside, you can do it at home, whatever you want to do, but don't spray your drawing in the plastic. It stinks. It's very toxic. Okay. And when you're spray fixing it, make sure that you do it here. Leave it outside for at least 5 to 7 minutes. Okay, don't just bring it right back in. Okay. All right, so I want to take a picture of my skull. I'm going to have my camera out. Oh, no. I'm going to draw in the same direction. Let's see if I can do this with one thing. I know, but it's for teaching. For teaching, and it's a write-off for me. Come on! All right, so it's like right here. I'm still taking a picture. Here, I'm going to give you guys one this. Thanks. My phone is doing a job right now. So I want to make sure it is facing the same way as my model. I can look at the photo. I can look at my drawing, whatever I trust. I want to be able to see that second eye socket. Her face is tilted down a little bit. The light should be in here. The shadow is like pressing right along this core. And once I got it in that position, you have to be like right where my face is. Like right where my face is. No, like right here. Okay, really good. Okay. Like right here, like this. Or else it's not.
Oh, that makes sense.
I'll just press the button. So I'll go back to you. It has to be the exact same.
Put your arm over his head.
Just hug me. Give him a hug.
All right, yeah.
There we go. One more right there. Right there. Perfect. Thank you, sir. It's not good. Okay, so the very first thing I want to do is actually, what's the Duralar still going around? Can I grab that? You're going to take this directly to your drawing. There is no right or wrong side there. Both will take. Imagine I had spray fixed this and it is amazing. Voila.
Like, would you work back into that?
Hard to erase. Very easy to add. Yeah. So if you have whites, make sure your whites are all reserved. You don't need to add it. So, but I would say do it after you're done with the drawing or almost done. That would be my next step. Same way I did it with my own. Finish the drawing, make sure it's solid, spray fix it, and just work on it. Okay. So I want to make sure that that Duralar is in place. I don't need this anymore. Okay. I actually like drawing directly from the skull. So if nobody's using it, I will actually hold it up. And Duralar is really resilient, so I actually like to draw. A lot of action is happening. I will draw with this pencil directly on the Duralar, hold it up in place. And then just kind of like follow her face. Now, the edge of her face is not her hair, right? Her skull is on the inside of her hair. Yeah. Inside of her hair, inside of her hair, inside of her hair. I don't really need to look at my model because all of this is her bony landmark structure. You notice like that skull should be her face, right? Her jawline is directly that skull. So just because this is the skull that I have, that's not going to be the skull that she has. Okay, that makes sense to everyone? All right, I'm going to come down and I'm going to draw right through the orbit of her eye. And I'm going to check and see where her zygomatic bone ends. And I'm going to find that other orbit. Okay. Nose will crest right above it. Sorry, I'm putting it in the way. The nose will crest right above it. Her nasal bone is going to come out like this. Anyone thought nose and perspective was like drawing the bone perspective? There's the center line. I might move it right now. I'm just going to leave it right there. Always want to draw through that center. Jaws out. That's nice. Question for you?
The pencil, that's all.
Just regular pencil. Yeah, you don't need to draw anything. Duralar is really resilient, so anything that I'm using for.
Are we gonna like, for like the schedule of like doing these lines?
I did last week, but I'll do it.
Yeah.
No problem. I'll probably do it next month. But before we end today, I'll talk to you guys about transferring. So, next class is regular drawing class.
Oh.
Yes. So you want to line the wall of that stuff. This means that time transferring or the other one.
Or you could be like transferring by for that.
Yep, you bring your board.
Oh, so you still need to bring the board.
Yeah, you still bring your board. I can't give you the paper. It's being like the papers are good. Such a good sheet. Stay with it. Yeah, I probably won't have to throw alarm until I get a couple of these. I'll do it later. And that I don't really care about too much because it's you can roll it. Never care for this. So do you guys see how I'm like following like Simone's specific anatomical landmarks? I think it's really important. I'm following her eyes. She's gonna have a smaller all that structure is for but once that's done, that's kind of like the first step. Okay, that makes sense to everybody. Okay. So let me take a picture of that really quick. You ever show her like stalling? This is what stalling. She was next to me for like 3 hours while I was doing that demo, and she was grabbing stuff. So I saw that. She was like, "Let's go down." Like that's your skull. She's like, "Ah, it's fine." They're so used to me. It's just like that. They don't even care. They have over like 100 drawings in that, from like 0 to like now.
That's so nice.
One day I'm gonna like wallpaper a whole wall, because they're like drawings, paintings, portraits, and they're all the textures and views. So I've been doing it pretty intentionally, like doing demos, and then if I'm gonna draw somebody, I might as well draw somebody that I actually am okay with it keeping. Because I felt like weird about having like all my models just like being on the studio. I feel like I want to give them faces back. It's weird. But I keep them for, and some of them I've given away, but I keep them for the sake of.
Use your face back.
Hmm?
Use your face back.
Yeah, the first back. I don't want it. That's not let me use it. Alright,
Use it to
so
unlock your phone.
here's the center, right? Center of the neck. And why am I trying to find it? Why am I trying to find the center of the sternum, right? 'Cause it's gonna be right here. So I need to like map out where all of these shapes are going to be. Her shoulders coming out like this. It's hard because she's got long hair. It's great red nipple, clean ass. So her trapeze is coming out like this. And then this sternum for the master must be very, very full. Meaning it's going to be smaller than this one on the other side. Because it's just going around. So this one's going to come down. Please use your anatomy books. Don't leave this out of your head. Obviously, you guys know. Two whole days. It's really up to the. And depending on where you guys are at, I might keep another day, but we're gonna be careful one day. I don't want to promise anything within my knowledge today. We'll see. So every piece is over like this. And I basically like lay in everything in graphite. Okay, and you can see like I'm not too worried about teeth, like I just want like the shapes of the teeth in. I don't need to draw like individual teeth, that's like the most relevant thing. If you look at the demo, I'll hold it up so you guys can see it on screen. You can see how I'm just kind of like indicating, I'm not like drawing. That camera. All right, and then just really quick. There's your head. Portrait. Portrait. Okay. Now, here's the first step, right? Imagine I have taken maybe 10 hours, not 10 hours, let's say 3 hours, 4 hours, and laid out all the muscles. So everything's already drawn in. Okay, that's what I would do first. Once I've done that, then I'll come in and I'll look at her value systems. And this is really, really important. One of the things we can notice is materials don't work the same. So if I take like a vine charcoal, I will actually throw vine over the whole drawing, including my graphite. It's like scary. The beauty of the Duralar is actually a little bit more resilient. Than the paper. This is what I was showing others. Yeah. So I have all this value in there, and when I like start smudging it around, I'll just use my finger on it here, and it will actually show my pencil underneath it, which is pretty cool. The pencil just kind of like sticks to the plastic, whereas my charcoal will wipe it off. And then what I'm doing is placing your value system. Okay. And notice I'm going right over the muscles. So when I lay in the muscles, your muscles already have a shape. Okay. Super important thing to notice. And note, most of the drawing that I'm doing is actually with the wax pencils, and the wax pencils in combination with graphite pencil. Okay. Let's go figure it out. All right, so now I'll pick up the photo that Casey took. Okay. And I can kind of look and see like what her skull looks like. And now I'm not dependent on this for drawing it. I'm dependent only on for the shadows, right? And you can, obviously you can edit it. I can change the exposure of it if I want to get darker or lighter. But more importantly, what I like to do is go in and get rid of all the color. Okay. And then I can come in and like up the contrast. And then I have like a better starting point with the value relationship. Like, everyone can see what I do. Okay. All right. So with that in mind, I'm gonna come in and I'm gonna just massively think about edges and values. And I'm much more aggressive with this than I am. So, with the value relationships, with Duralar are going to give me a lot more flexibility. You can, I would. It actually creates that like funky sheen, which I kind of like. It's like a matte sheen. Normally, I'm not a fan of spray fix, but with a process like this, where we're using different shapes, and they're literally sitting on top of each other, and I'm putting pressure on the other one because it's drawing on top of it. I would definitely spray fix. I will tell you, once you spray fix the Duralar, you can't draw on top of it. It crisps up, so it will chip off the chart underneath. So don't spray fix it. Just So she's got this hard edge for the nasal bone. I'm gonna let a little bit of light show. I'm not like that careful with it. It's just plastic. Now, face, a little bit of light showing in here. It's gonna do that. Any anatomy I want to indicate, I'm looking here. And I will not hesitate to take a really hard line. This is more of a line. What else? And have fun with it, you want you guys to enjoy the process. It's really get your head around it. Like, actual anatomy of my actual cigarette, how cool is that? And start to visualize the scale of the forms. So imagine there's a little bit of swing. I'm not gonna do everything on the screen. You want to get crazy and treasure this. Kind of late. What time is it right now? 22. We only have 10 minutes. But that's good. We're gonna actually.
What are we supposed to do again for 2 days?
2 days in class, but you'll have from now to the end of the semester work on it.
Okay.
If you ever have a problem with it, there is a portal in every single Canvas. It's like submit here if you have questions in your homework, and you can submit there and ask me questions like, why are you making us miserable? Why do you hate us so much? Why are you torturing me? And I'll just send you a laughing emoji. Ha ha ha. Just kidding. Good question. Okay, I'll start working on my anatomy. I'll make sure you draw in striations and muscles. The great thing is like if I lay in my shadow ahead of time, right? Whatever I indicate for my muscles on in the shadow side, I don't need to like add more shadow. Like shadow's already there. I'm just gonna like make this is gonna look like it's in light because there's nothing underneath it. Does that make sense, everyone? Okay. All right, so 2 more concepts I want to cover. So if I want to make transitions, you know, use your fine charcoal. If you want to soften anything up, you can use your graphite pencil. I wanted to cover like making darks even darker because that was like an issue I ran into because I hadn't used Duralar in a very long time. And that was the solution was my micron pen, okay, or a Sharpie, either of those. So by taking like a micron pen and by literally just like making a whole bunch of like pen marks, I can actually use that while it's still wet and mix it with my number 3 or number 2 Nero chemical. And you can see like I can actually make like darker darks. Okay. You can see how I did that?
Yeah.
And you can draw like on top of it. So if I want it to get even darker, like on pen, right? Let's say I want like a really, really dark edge right here. And that wasn't the finest. I apologize. I hadn't like problem solved everything to time it, but same thing works with the shark.
Drawing.
Yeah. You'll see it on the one that I did, but you can see how that it's like flat, close to flat. Okay. And the last thing I want to show you was your lights. Duralar is this like funky grayish tone, and nothing really like sticks out. But if you want, this is what I use: comic ink, COMIC ink, INK. Comic ink. Comic ink.
Optional, okay.
It is optional if you want to add lights. Okay. I'll also have it in class, so if you don't want to buy it, you want to do it, it's really expensive. You might be able to find it on Amazon. You just don't want to get out of your house. And then I'll use it to actually just like lay in all my highlights. So I know that she's gonna have a highlight here. No, there's usually a highlight here.
You're trying to do something like involving.
Yeah, I didn't like the new ink got so black, it like separated. I tried a bunch of stuff. Yeah,
Separated like.
it just went black,
Oh, okay.
jet black. It didn't let me find like a middle ground, and I think it was harder for students to use. Like in my head, I was like thinking, okay, I can blue it, I can mix it, I can use this, but it's so easy for me to like draw right on top of my content. So I'm just trying to figure out the use. But there's any ink will work. So if you want to use any ink, yeah, perfect. Let me know how it works. It's definitely a cost. Yeah, it's definitely like easier to use. You wouldn't have to like mix it. So the ink doesn't become like so strong. So I'll go through and I kind of like leave the highlights really strong. If you want to blend it out, just kind of like do with lines. But I use kind of lines to like dictate where I want the colors to be. And that's where you can like blast those colors. Okay. And there was one more highlight like on the forehead. Okay. Does that make sense to everyone? Yes. Paper and Duralar and those big chocolate sticks. Yeah. Euro pencils you have to buy. If you want to use the common thing, I would get that. Graphite pencil, you only need the 2H. Okay. Charcoal, you're gonna need the HB and the B, Brimo pencils. It's on your list too. And you need an X-Acto, an eraser. You're gonna need a sharpening pad and then pencil sharpeners in class. Okay. I would recommend having that.
It's these ones, right?
Yes, sir. Do they say Nero? Any
Yeah.
color on them?
Yeah.
Those are the pencils. Yes, you can stop there. You're good.
Just a quick question, what stuff do we need specifically for light transponder?
Yeah, so let me go over it. Actually, while the camera's on, So for Monday. If you're ready to start, and if I've approved your photos, you need just a photo of your full figure, okay? You need to have it on a USB thumb drive or on your phone, or both. Actually, you need to know both, because I'm not sure which projector you're gonna use. You need to have your board ready to go, and then you need all your supplies to draw from the model. These people that are projecting, they're gonna be drawing from the model, okay? It's totally up to you. I feel like it's a lot easier for students to work in black and white photos. Yeah, I actually work in color photos usually, because then I can make stuff up and I don't feel like dependent on them. Yeah. So I print these out in black and white just to make it easier. Yeah.
When you get through the newspaper pads, is that like a separate pad? Is it different from the one that we bought? We've been using for the entire semester, or is it?
I actually ordered those for you guys. They're really good to take.
But are they different than the ones we have already?
If you don't have smooth newsprint, they're different. Like half the class is not smooth newsprint. Yeah.
Should our photos for the projection just be 8.5 by 11? The physical print would be along with.
I actually don't even print out the full size one. I just print out like this. But yeah, I print out like 8.5 by 11. I've had like 2 or 3 students like a class print out like goes and get like a big like 15 by 21 printed out because it felt like it was helpful to them. It's up to you. You know. I will do this. Like I will go on to Photoshop and like if I want a bigger printout, just copy and paste it and put it together. You can also do that. I will put stuff together. Okay. Your head should be close to the same size as your head, which means it should be a full 8.5 by 11. That's going to be approximately the size that you're going to be drawing at, about the size of this. At that size, 40 by 25. Okay. So make sure you have at least one printout of the head and feet. They should all take like a page on them. Okay. You don't need one hand per page, just like. The only thing you need by next class is the images digitally saved on your phone and on a thumb drive and your board if you want to start working on it. If you are going to project on Monday, just send me an email so I can like make a list of things. And then if you are going to project, I always tell you guys this, but I'll tell you this anyway. I start with who arrives first, right? Because I can give you a list and a schedule and all you can follow. So if you want to get it done first, I start at like, you guys are going to be around 12:45.
So it's going to be
Class. Yeah. Yeah. We're gonna have a model for the class.
Okay.
I'm doing it as a service. Like here, let me help you here draw for it, but it's not going to be a part of the class. Make sense? And that's actually helping another possible. So people want that. And the one thing that I always say is don't take your drawing off the board until you come and grab me and say, hey, how does this look? Because people will just take a drawing. And once your drawing is taken off the board, it will never line up. So that's it. The projection time is that. Okay. Even if you've done something wrong. Because that projector will never, ever, 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 ever line up with lines. It's just impossible. Cool. All right. Hopefully this is helpful. I know it's a long time. It's a good way to get started. I'll save all this stuff out. Give me like at least 2 or 3 days because I have a lot of content. Photos in. All right, you guys are free to go. Thank you.
Thank you.
Of course.